DNVR is back with another Avs 1.0 interview, this time with the first ever Colorado Avalanche pick in the NHL draft, Marc Denis. Marc, thank you for joining us, first of all, and taking some time out of your day. What was it like being an Avalanche draft pick before they even had a logo at the time?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, it was somewhat crazy, right? Getting that NHL jersey and truck driver hat, I guess, on with my long, sleek hair back then. Just a pup, I guess, just a teenager living his dream. Obviously, a little bit of a sweet and sour taste, being the Avalanche just moved from Quebec City, being a Quebec-born, Montreal-born goalie, being drafted by the Avs, but just very happy to hear my name. I'm not going to say a shock, but somewhat of a bit of a surprise to hear my name in the first round. 25th overall back then in a 26-team league. And just an amazing whirlwind of emotion that started when the name was called, and that kind of ended 5 years later when I moved on to Columbus. So, yeah, all in all, just a tremendous experience, a tremendous day. The draft was later in the summer because it was post-lockout. It was post, the Nordiques moving to Colorado, and hearing my name and wearing that jersey was still pretty special. There was a Colorado name tag in the back. I didn't even get my last name on my jersey, on my draft jersey.
When did you actually get an Avalanche jersey with your name on it? When did you actually get to wear that for the first time?
I think it was a couple of days before I actually left for camp. It was that same summer, but it was just a few days after or before leaving for camp. I got it in my parents' house, actually, and it came in proper and everything with the colors, the logo, the 95 and the Denis name in the back. So that was, I actually got it before I got to go to my first ever camp in Denver.
I remember that helmet. Remember the helmet on the tables? Remember they used to have the goalie helmet with the logos, and this one was an NHL logo like the jersey you got. I freaking saw this like not too long ago. I think it was in my dad, I don't know why. I think it was my mom and dad's stuff that they had it, and then I desperately looked for it the other day, and I couldn't find it. But I know I saw it, and I'm like, oh my God, if we get Marc on it, we're gonna bring it and show him, because I know I have it somewhere. We took it, it's a piece of history somewhere somehow, But it was maybe just for people to know, Marc's a very intelligent man. Not because he's a goalie. These guys know I'm a goalie dad, right? So it's I'm very nice to the freaking goalies, and Marc was very intelligent back then, and there was that crop of goalies when you were growing up. Just make people understand here a little bit in Colorado, they're very familiar with Patrick, obviously, and then obviously you were there and those guys, but as a young Quebecer, how big was it that everyone ended up playing in the freaking NHL, including yourself, because Patrick had such a big influence, and you being drafted, obviously being behind them, for a couple years, and seeing how this was. How big was it for a young Quebecer like you?
It was huge. Just a couple of things to put it into perspective, I guess, is I was very privileged and fortunate, and very thankful to this day to be part of a record first round. And it was only 26 players back then, but 4 of us got our name called. J.S. Giguère, Marty Biron, Brian Boucher, who's got a French sounding name but is American, and then myself at the 25th. That was tremendous. That puts things into perspective. Now it's rare to hear even one goalie being named in the first round. You add to that the fact that we were all playing in the CHL and the Q and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and on a nightly basis we would obviously face each other. But there were also guys named Roberto Luongo or Mathieu Garon or J.S. Aubin that had actually NHL careers. So basically you're facing an NHL caliber goaltender every single night playing in junior hockey, which is pretty amazing. Doesn't happen too often anymore. It doesn't happen in U.S. college just because it's a global game now. But you're right. Patrick was such a big influence. He was, I was 8 years old when he came into the league, won a first cup wearing the brown pads. François Allaire, who's a very well-known goaltending coach, obviously was a pioneer, and with the butterfly style, of course, which I think you can attribute and run back to Quebec. But just because we had coaches, we had the focus on the position, good athletes wanted to be goalies. And thanks for noticing how smart I was. But yes, it was because I was a goalie, Eric. It was part of it, absolutely.
The smartest freaking players I ever freaking been around, so.
You got to play, obviously, with Wah, who I think everyone on this pod might consider the best goalie of all time.
So would I.
There you go. You heard it from his mouth. Just kind of what is that process like playing with someone of his caliber, and then going through the rest of your career, like you mentioned, you moved on to Columbus in their expansion, and playing out the rest of your career at times against a guy like that.
Well, first and foremost, it's playing with a childhood hero. My first ever preseason NHL action was actually on the back end of a rookie game in Campbellton, New Brunswick, because we had at the first year of the Avalanche training camp, we had the Nordiques preseason schedule. So traveled all the way to New Brunswick with rookies to play a game. And I remember Nick Baudouin and I, the first two ever draft picks, I guess, got called up to Bob Hartley's room back then. And he told us, you guys are taking a flight in the morning. You guys are playing in the Montreal Forum tonight. And we ended up playing that game. And I ended up playing against Patrick Roy, who was still in Montreal Canadiens. I was actually in attendance that Saturday night against Detroit when Patrick raised his arms to the ceiling, and that led to the very famous trade for the Avs for Patrick, for NHL history. And the very next camp, to be sitting right beside him in the dressing room was absolutely fantastic. It was tremendous. The short stint that I got to play, the full year I got to play, be beside him, be his backup, be his teammate, just a learning experience, which was tremendous. Some of his legendary speeches after the first or the second period, he would turn to me and say, now I got to shut the door, and kind of telling me to write down notes. Unfortunately, I was never able to reach all the peaks and the championships that Patrick did, but obviously learned a lot, and that I could actually bring forward for the rest of my career as far as leadership is concerned, as far as the will to win hockey games, and obviously working together. As we said back then, yes, there were goalie coaches, but a lot of times it was just Patrick and I working a little bit with Jacques, with Coco Cluche on the ice, but we were each other's goalie coaches for long stretches, and it was a tremendous experience for a young kid born and raised in Montreal, growing up idolizing a childhood hero in Patrick Roy, and getting to play with him.
You played your first NHL games in your D+2. Obviously got more and more as the years went on from there. How do you compare the process of development as a goaltender back when you were doing it as to where we see kids today, where at the NHL it's much more common for goalies to go 3, 4, 5 years before they really start seeing NHL action?
I don't know if I would have had the patience. We were brought up, you know what, I still believe to this day we were brought up the right way with what we knew back then. Goaltenders tend to reach consistency at a later stage in their career. I think it was true even for us back then. But somehow we were thrown on the biggest stages early in our careers, and I think that helped us to develop not faster, but to be thrown to the fire and to react and to see how we would react. I got to play some huge games at the junior level, obviously with the World Junior Championships and all that. I also, thrown to the fire at the AHL level, winning a Calder Cup in '97. My first full pro year I was the number one guy. Same thing for the second year when I kind of shuttled up and down between, Colorado or between Denver and Hershey. But, still, we were given that opportunity to play the bigger games, to play the load of the games as well. When I was in Hershey, we weren't asked too many questions. If I was healthy and I was there, I was playing most of the games. I got to play with Peter Frenick, with David Abisher, who was a longtime Avs goalie as well. But, still, when we were at a young age, we got to play these games. I got my first call up. I was still a junior kid. I got my first start. I was of junior age. So great experiences. I think nowadays it's not about patience, to be honest with you. It's about developing players, I think, at the right rhythm. It's gotten to be a younger game, but not necessarily between the pipes. And I think the consistency is obviously a big part of it.
Obviously, for the Avs fans, Marc does the Montreal Canadiens TV, and he does a great job, obviously, in our native tongue of French. I'm sorry, guys. They hate when I speak French, But Marc's outstanding, like I said. And what led you to, when the career ended, to get into the TV, which you do a fantastic job at. It's hard for me to show these guys what you do because they don't understand the language. But, obviously, me understanding the language, you do a fabulous job out there. And I know that the public really likes your presence on TV. What led you to the TV after your career?
I'll send you the money, I promise, right afterwards, after those nice comments there, Eric. Listen, I was very fortunate, and you know what, Eric, I'm sure you've had former teammates that didn't have it as easy as I'm not going to say we had it easy, but finding their calling, living their passion past their hockey playing days. And I was very fortunate to get those phone calls the year after I hung them up and I couldn't find an NHL gig. So I was very fortunate. Once again, I started really slowly doing a little bit of studio work, doing a little bit of radio work. And the next thing you know, there's an offer to be the voice, one of the voices anyways, of, being the color analyst for the Montreal Canadiens NHL games, which is pretty amazing. We got a huge following, obviously. I'm surrounded by a legend. Pierre Hood just got named a few weeks back here, the Foster Hewitt Memorial winner for 2024. His name will be now in the Hall of Fame, deservedly so. And as you said, we're very privileged to have a huge following in a language that's, obviously our own. It's a smaller size market, but huge passion and energy and somewhat knowledge for the game as well. So, hey, listen, I don't take anything for granted. I think we need to keep up with the game. It's a faster game than back when we played. There's no doubt. It's a faster developing systems game as well than when we were playing. I mean, we were smart, but I don't know how smart we could be to keep up with everything that's going on. And that's something we have to do almost on a daily basis now. I know you do studio work as well, Eric, and you do a great job, but that's the calling. It's living our passion. It's being able to communicate it to, and hopefully bring it to an audience and maybe help them throughout watching a game, which whatever how long it is, right? 2.5, 3 hours. And maybe a couple of times during the night, if I can bring them something that it might not have caught real speed, showing a replay, trying to show them a little bit of the hockey knowledge, I think it helps their night and it makes mine, obviously better as well. But I don't take anything for granted. I think it's a lot of work, but hockey taught me to work and to work as a team. And that's what we do on TV as well.
Love it.
Gotta ask, in your time in the NHL, is there one player that you felt like just had your number, or if you looked up on he was on a breakaway, you would hate to see him?
Yeah, you know what? Tony Amonte's putting on the brakes and coming back would get me every time. It's not like I didn't know he was going to do it. He did it every single time, right? But it didn't matter if he played on a worse team than us. And even when I was playing with the Avs and he was in Chicago, and he would still get me, and even his great days. So yeah. That was earlier in my career. There are players that obviously feel like they would score every single time. There are other players like Ovechkin. I felt like I stopped him every single chance I had. I don't know. I lost more games than I won, but I showed up every single day the next day. And, bring it on, Tony Amonte. Maybe if we play an old-timers game, I'll know your move now.
I'll let him know. I see him. He plays with my son. Like, his son plays with my son at BU. Yeah. I saw him a few months ago.
Hey,
yeah.
Look, if you're stopping Ovi, I'll give you the Amonte goals every single time.
Yeah. But Ovi wasn't that hard to figure out early in his career. I would get the glove up there, and he would shoot it in it. So, it wasn't that tough.
Are you good?
Good.
Okay. All right.
Marc, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate y'all doing the interview with us. If there's anything you want to shout out, let people know where they can find you, go for it.
Yeah, it was just awesome to reminisce. I'll be honest with you. I think it started me on the right path, playing for the Colorado Avalanche, being their draft pick. Obviously, great ton of respect for Mr. Lacroix, who drafted me there. Obviously, Eric goes without saying, but just love going back to Denver every single chance I get. So RDS is the French ESPN. That's where I do my stuff. And anytime you guys want to give me a shout, I'm on all the regular social networks, but I don't participate that much. But you guys can give me a shout anytime. It was awesome participating. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Gabe. We
Marc.
appreciate you. I'm sure we'll see you around soon.
Merci, mon Jean.
See you around. I'll see.